Utahns think their quality of life is getting worse. Here's what they said. This is from the Salt Lake Tribune. This article was actually written a little more than a year ago, April of last year. And I wanted to share it because I think it helps tell the story that I would like to be told here. Some Utah voters think their state is on the wrong track. That's according to a new report from the Utah Foundation, which we'll get into in a minute. Researchers surveyed 656 voter-registered Utah voters. Only 42% of respondents thought the state was headed in the right direction. That's a sharp decrease from the past 20 years of survey results. What's to blame? I think a lot of it goes back to the top issue of housing affordability and those big issues of overall affordability, said Rep. Robert Spendlove, Republican in Sandy, at a news conference Tuesday. People just don't feel like they have the opportunity that they've had in the past. You know what's really funny is he talks about pricing and house affordability, which that's definitely an issue. But look at the second one. Politicians listening to their voters. Maybe it's because you're not listening to us, Representative Spendlove. Next, earning enough to pay for non-housing needs, government overreach, and partisan politics. Looks like 3 of the top 5 all have to do with politics here. Having enough water other than the Great Salt Lake. That's another political issue. Air quality, that one's a little different. State and local taxes, immigration, homelessness. You can see transgender rights apparently are at the bottom for least important. I think generally speaking, Utah, when it comes to transgender rights, it comes down to we consider it a sin to mutilate your body, but you can do what you want. When you're an adult and when you're a child, we don't think you should be able to do what you want. And for the most part, Utah tries to be very compassionate. That's driven very widely by the LDS faith system. But up here is the top issue, housing affordability. I actually think people don't understand that the housing affordability issue that we are dealing with is a direct relation to the politics that have been going on the last few years. Maybe even longer than the last few years, probably the last decade. Effectively, from my perspective, I believe that the Utah government is trying to destroy the current culture of Utah, the current people of Utah, and break up the LDS coalition that's effectively here. So let's get down to it. Here's the Utah Foundation. Priced out and fed up. Cost of living and political dysfunction are voters' top issues. So they've got the same report we were just looking at. They're the ones who actually provided the report. Again, you can see the top rank is housing and ignoring voters. It's actually a rank range of 1 to 2. So it could be possible politicians listening to their voters is actually the top issue, possibly. There's another one, though, if we come down here. 3 in 5 Utah voters consider the state to be on the wrong track, the highest share in over 20 years. So right track has gone down since 2024, and right track has gone, not being on the right track, has gone up. So Utahns are recognizing that the soul of Utah is under attack. And I believe that our soul was sold, and by our soul, I mean Utah soul, the soul that is Utah was sold for business development, for GDP, for economic growth. And it's disguised that way because generally speaking, it's a good thing to say, hey, we're going to give you better economic opportunities. We're going to help you be able to make more money. And at first, it always starts out that way. But in the long term, I think this is going to end up worse off for Utah, for Utah's culture, and for those of us who grew up here, lived here, had families that have been here for a long time. This is going to be bad news for us. Why do I think that? Well, let's look at, not that one, this one. Utah population to increase by 2.2 million people through 2060. So effectively, the idea is that they believe Utah's population is almost going to double in the next 30 years or so. They believe that this growth is projected due to, let's see, it was in here, or maybe I'm thinking of a different article. It's possible. But effectively, a lot of this change is going to happen specifically in Salt Lake and Utah County, which is where the majority of Utah's population is. It's expected because of how Utah is trying to be very business friendly in the tech center, in the tech world, technology, biotech. Utah is trying to focus on degrees that are very STEM related, that tend to be very high earning degrees. And with that change, that sounds like good news off the bat. Like the first thing you hear is like, oh, that sounds really good. But the reason this is a bad thing is because what's happening is there's not enough Utahns to be able to fulfill these positions. And if there's not enough people from Utah to fill these positions, that means we're going to have to go elsewhere. Not only that, they've actually said that they want to compete with California, Washington, Colorado, other states that tend to be more technology driven. And a lot of these states tend to be blue. And those individuals are going to want to come to Utah because Utah is trying to be competitive. And when you invite someone from outside, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but the more we invite individuals from outside our state, the more the culture of this state is going to have to change and become different. Now, of course, there's many that live in Utah that are asking for these changes to come. Most of the time, it happens to be the Democrats that want the change. Republicans don't tend to want to, but I'm here to argue that most of the Republicans in the Utah government, I'm not going to say they're Democrats per se, but they're definitely wolves in sheep clothing. They are not, and by sheep, I'm not saying that they're. I'm not trying to take this necessarily to a religious ground. It's not that they're pretending to be Mormon or that they're pretending to share our values. I think really what it is, well, they are actually pretending to share our values. It is a fact in Utah that many that are Democrats, will choose to register as a Republican so that they can vote in the Republican primary because they know very well Republicans are going to win. They do this so that they can subvert the actual will of Republicans. I think that's dirty. I think it's slimy. And if you can't win the normal way, you shouldn't go to these type of tactics to do that. I think it's disgusting. Now, I myself do not consider myself a Republican or a Democrat. I do lean towards the Republicans, especially in more recent years because of what's going on with MAGA and Donald Trump. I think that the Republican Party has more common sense than the Democrat Party right now. The Democrat Party seems to, on the federal level and just as a state, they're the ones who want to mutilate children. They're the ones who are pushing for this LGBTQ. They're just pushing it really hard. And it's not to say that I think that the gays shouldn't have certain, I hate using the word rights because we should all have the same rights. They shouldn't have a right that I don't have, and I shouldn't have a right that they don't have. But I do believe that, like, again, I want to have compassion towards everybody. I want to make sure everyone feels loved, that they're cared for, that they're taken care of. But I think there's this push, which is very subversive to the way that America has been for a long time, and more specifically Utah. So in here, let's see. Maybe there was something in here that I was trying to find, but I can't find it. So we'll jump to this one. Utah's affordable apartments vanish. So one of the areas that this is causing an issue that everyone's seen, so many individuals have come from out of state to buy property in Utah, specifically during COVID when there was that mass exodus from California. They had more money for housing because they were used to that in the state in which they already lived. Moving to Utah, they were able to help push up those prices and other means. I know it wasn't strictly just it wasn't just Californians and Democrats moving over to Utah that rose our prices in the housing market, but it definitely was a large contributing factor. You can see here, this is the change in Utah rental units from 2013 to 2023. The decrease or increase is how many units corrected for inflation have been adjusted on the monthly basis. So under $600 in 2013, we dropped by 37,000 now, from 37,000 to 28,000. So that's a loss of 10,000. Now I don't know what this. I think this is how many actual places specifically. So I think there's we lost 10,000 homes that are under $600 or 10,000 units to be able to move into. It says and vacant units. Okay, I missed that part. So and vacant. So it dropped down 10,000. You can see this is a huge drop, $600 to $1,000 effectively, just under. That's a huge drop. So not only did they drop, but the increase from 1,400 in the 2000s has far exceeded what I would have loved to have seen in Utah. This is pushing out regular Utahns who grew up here because outside forces are moving in because Utah's trying to grow our GDP. We are selling our soul for economic growth, but that economic growth is not going to benefit those who live here. If you live here and you go to school and you get a degree, Sure, you might be one of the lucky ones that's able to find a job, but I know a lot of individuals who've applied for jobs and they're not getting them. Utah has hired 2,000 developers. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when developers are like, when Utah developers are moving around from different jobs and everything, 2,000 is actually a pretty big number. 2,000 were hired from H-1B visas. So this is out of country. We were hiring individuals in Utah to be developers. Outside of that, I don't know the numbers. I was trying to find them and I didn't find a reliable number that I was willing to rely on. But Utah is hiring out of state as well in massive numbers for developers, for the tech industry. So Utahns are getting pushed out of that industry that they are trying to build in Utah. So if Utahns are getting kicked out, they're not going to be able to get these high earning jobs, which means they're not going to be able to pay for the high housing, the increase in the housing. They're not going to be able to afford to buy a home. And they're going to have to leave. I think this is intentional. I think it was on purpose. I think they are trying to get rid of the Utah culture, Utah coalition that has lived here for so long, and they want to disrupt the state, and they want to turn it probably blue for whatever reason. And again, I don't like Democrats or Republicans, especially on the federal level. I think they're all corrupt. I think they're all part of some secret, let's just call it a cabal, but I think the deep state's real. I think these things are happening in Utah just as much. Here's a really good example. Utah is planning on building what they call the Point. The title was at the top, but this is phase 1 of the Point. So here's a picture. This is where the Draper prison used to be. They're tearing it down and they're going to replace it with a giant complex, which is going to be called a 15-minute city, which is based on a bunch of this, leftist type thought process where it needs to be sustainable and you need to be able to, like, everything that you need is within 15 minutes. Here's the deal though. This is going to, again, call in individuals not from Utah. Now, I'm not saying that Utahns aren't going to move to these places. Of course, they're going to move to these places. There's going to be individuals drawn here, but this is what's going to happen. Draper is very much a urban community, and most of the urban communities within Salt Lake County are very much red. This is going to turn that area blue. And after that area turns blue, it's going to start to change the Salt Lake County to blue. And not only that, but the government still owns this land. They are not giving up this land. This is going to be leased. So the individuals who move here will not have an actual genuine stake in the land of Utah because they cannot own that land in Utah. They're only leasing it. This is a problem. Okay. From the earliest days, everyone knew that our liberties came down to our ability to own and control our property. And these are being removed from Utahns. It's being removed from everybody. And right now, this is a government-sanctioned location that is going to be built with government tax dollars. They're giving a loan or whatever, and I understand private equity is going to come in and they're going to try to do things. But these individuals who are building here are not going to share the same values that we Utahns hold. They are bringing in individuals who do not share our values. Not only that, but on top of that, Utah is on track to have one of its driest, warmest years, as half the state is in severe drought. Not only do they want to bring in more, another 2.2 million people are going to increase, and I get it, some of those are going to be babies, but a lot of individuals are going to be moving to Utah because they're trying to incentivize them to come here. And we are having water issues that we need to deal with. I don't know if you've seen the Salt Lake map. I probably should have had that pulled up, but the Salt Lake is so low. I've been driving up many different canyons, looking at different reservoirs, and they are extremely low. We are having a very bad drought this year, and it's very possible it's just going to get worse. And not only is it going to get worse, but if we bring in more people, there's not going to be enough water for all these individuals that are coming. Let's see. I think there was somewhere on here that effectively was, I thought, I don't know, maybe I was thinking of a different article. There's another thing. They are doing this reality TV show, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Now, my perspective as someone who's part of the LDS faith, I don't view any of these sisters from the clips that I've seen and the things that they've said as faithful members of the LDS faith. I'm not going to actively try to judge them. I have no idea. But from the clips I've seen, some of them have practiced in soft swinging. I think some of them are actively, like, they drink alcohol, blah, blah, blah. They are doing things that actively go against what the actual Mormon culture is. And I think this is all intended. I think this is on purpose. I think they intend to destroy the Utah culture as it is today and the Utah Coalition, again, mostly based on the LDS faith and theology. This change is to push them out, to get them to leave. If you cannot live here, you're going to try to find somewhere else to live. And I think they're doing it on purpose to kick us all out. And I think we need to hold strong and we need to fight back. Another thing is, I'm sure you've heard of like traditional wives and trad cons and all that. I kind of wanted to use the secret lives of Mormon wives to kind of lead into this. Is there's this belief that a traditional wife can be on YouTube, but I'm going to tell you that is the furthest thing from the truth. Because if you're traditional, you're going to be doing traditional things. You're not going to be on YouTube. You're not going to be on Rumble. You're not going to be on TikTok. You're not going to be telling the world what you're doing. You're not going to be sharing all your thoughts with your children. You're going to be actually spending time with your children and raising your children and spending time with your husband. Now, I am not saying by any means that a woman cannot go into the workforce or that they shouldn't be in the workforce. But what I am saying is, generally speaking, the woman's place is in the home with her children. This has been the reality for all of history. And we're trying to pretend that because women want to be men now, that they should be with the men. And again, I'm not saying that women shouldn't be allowed to work. I'm not going to advocate for that. I think there are times that obviously women are going to have to work, that they should have to work, all those different things. But Utah has been doing it right. This is my favorite. Utah continues to be ranked as the worst state for women's equality 11 years running. Now, the reason I find this funny is the metrics. So let me read this and then I'll get into the metrics. For 11 years running, Utah is ranked as the worst state when it comes to women's equality. And in Wallet Hub's 2025 findings just released, we are not only ranked as the 50th of 50 states yet again, but there is a substantial gap between the next worst state, Texas, with Idaho, Arkansas, and Louisiana near the bottom two, but with a 12 points or more out of 100 than Utah. So let's get into it. Here is Wallet Hub, where they rank Utah as one of the worst states for equal rights for women. Now, first and foremost, men and women are not equal. We never have been equal. There's never been equality because equality means the same. A man and a woman are different. I can't make babies. Can't do it. That's impossible. That is something that women can do. And women have been tricked into thinking that one of the greatest things that they could ever do, that humanity could even do, comes from a woman being able to create life, to raise that life, to nurture life. Children are awesome. And most women know that, but there have been many women who have been tricked to believe that having babies is a bad thing and that they should be more like men. I don't understand it. You'll never be equal with men because men will never be equal with women. It's not the same. Now, there's a difference between being equal in the law and being given opportunities, and I'm okay with that, but let's look into their metrics. So first and foremost, you'll see Utah here is at the bottom. Texas is next, and yeah, there's a pretty big jump here. So we get absolute bottom on these two, and then that one apparently is middle. So let's look what those are. So we are the absolute bottom with workplace environment rank. I wonder if it's because a lot of women in Utah are actually having babies and want to be with their children because they love their children. Again, I'm not saying they shouldn't, like that they can't be in the workplace, but I think the majority of women in Utah understand that raising a baby, raising a family is far more fulfilling to them than going to some stupid meeting with a bunch of other dudes and trying to tell them how to work and do all this data and working through numbers and all of that. I don't think they care. Education and health ranking. Again, maybe it's because they're actually having babies, actually propagating our species. Political empowerment rank. Hey, look at that. We're actually pretty average on political. Why? Because there's a lot of women that run for politics in Utah. And to be honest, I'm okay with it because the majority of them seem to have already raised a family. And it's like, I got some free time on my hand. I want to do something. Good. Go help change the politics. Why not? So let's look at the metrics that they actually use. It's somewhere. Yeah, here it is. So the methodology they used, they have those 3 areas, but it's ranked by 17 relevant metrics, which are listed below with their corresponding weights. Each metric has a grade of 100 points. So let's look at it. Income disparity. Again, if women are at home making babies, of course, there's going to be a huge disparity. It's not going to be very high because they're just not going to have as many opportunities as the men in Utah. So, of course, higher income disparity. Disparity in share of executive positions, disparity in share of minimum wage workers, unemployment rate disparity, entrepreneur rate disparity, disparity in average number of work hours, job security disparity. That one might be an issue. Like, I get it. women should be able to have a secure job if they want to have a job. So sure, that one could be up higher. Economic security disparity. Okay. Disparity in poverty rate. So when I look at this, what I see is they're saying, you need to be in the workforce. You know, for all of human history, men and women have had their roles. And I do think for the most part, the rules are mostly accurate. I think there should be some overlay between the two. Sometimes men, like I need to be taking care of my children just as much as my wife does. I need to love my children and nurture my children, but she's primarily responsible for that. I, as the man, am primarily responsible to protect and provide for my children and to provide for my wife. I think it's funny that that women have been convinced that being able to stay at home and help take care of the family and help with some household chores or whatever is bad, and that they should be out doing workforce stuff that men are doing. Not only that, but they're not even doing the jobs that men are doing. Men are the ones who are building everything. Okay, like there are way more men in construction, way more men in the hard labor jobs, underwater welding. Most of the dangerous jobs are done by men, lumberjacks, and women are over here like, oh, I should be part of, what is it, executive positions? I'm sorry, but I think we already put too much weight into executive positions anyways. The majority of executive positions are owned by the top percentage of men, and not everyone's going to be able to be in an executive position even as a man. So why should a woman even have to be looking for that? Like, it's just stupid, especially when women are trying to raise their children. So I think this is very it's very pointed towards women should be just like men instead of actually having the role for women. And I'm sorry, but men are never going to be able to fulfill the role that women have fulfilled in history ever. We can't make babies. We can't. It's not a possibility. It's never going to happen. And if we can't, well, then I'm sorry, there's only one of the genders that can, or sexes that can. Gender's probably just not even a thing anymore because they changed the definition. Gender used to mean sex. So either it still does or it just doesn't exist. Education and health. Disparity in advanced educational attainment. Again, most women just don't want to go to these. Most women, especially in Utah, want to raise babies. So they're going to do degrees that kind of relate to having a baby. Disparity in math test scores. Men just tend to do better in math. Who cares? Like, again, what we should be doing is focusing on what are men good at, what are women good at, and let's propagate that. Let's understand our roles and work together. That's what equality actually means, is working together to achieve an end. I could never be who I could be as a man without my wife and without my children. Otherwise, I'm just some dude. It doesn't matter how successful I am, because success is not determined by workplace or by education, as it's saying here. Disparity in doctor visit affordability. I don't know what this means. So I would love to look into this, because if it's not cost effective, or like if it's better for men, I'm just not sure what that's saying. Maybe that one could be fixed. Political empowerment, total points. So disparity in share of lawmakers. Again, Utah, I mean, it's all approximately 5 points. Utah has a lot of women serving. Most of them are Democrats. I think that goes to just tell you, generally speaking, Republicans tend to be more traditional when it comes to roles. Men generally are the ones that lead, go out and build things. They provide and they protect. Women generally stay at home. They nurture and they provide service and they make babies. Nothing wrong with that. I think that is awesome. I think it's beautiful. So does my wife. So does so many other women in Utah. And we're being told that that's bad. So it's funny to me that they rank Utah as the worst when it comes to women's equality, when in reality, women are probably the most equal in Utah, because they're fulfilling their role as they were designed to do. And men are fulfilling their role as they were designed to do, as God intended. So again, I think that all of this is on purpose. I think that our government is complicit. Governor Cox, most of the legislature and Senate. And heck, even a lot of our judges, we can see that a lot of them tend to lean left with all of this. And again, I don't even think that the right's always right, or that Republicans are the correct party. But generally speaking, I think there is a coalition of individuals, namely, we'll put them under the name MAGA, who actually lean more towards the right, who understand what's actually going on in this country. They are trying to displace American culture, Utah populism, America's populism, all of it. Everything is trying to be uprooted, displaced, and it is time for us to take a stand. It is time for us to push back and tell our government that they are not listening to the voters. They are not doing what we want them to do. This needs to change. It will not let me highlight all the words. That is dumb. But I'm going to leave it there. Go ahead and leave a comment. If you disagree, you can also disagree with me on X. You can debate me there if you want, at Reese J. Crockett. I'm on YouTube and Rumble. You can Please just go ahead and like this video, subscribe. If you happen to know anybody, it's today's a holiday, so if you're at a party with family and friends, go ahead and share this video. Let them give it a watch and let them complain. You know, if you find me annoying, share it all the more so everyone can tell me how bad I am. We'll leave it there. Hope you have a great holiday day, and we'll until next time.